Well, there is another twist in this story. It turns out the federal government is planning to ease its rules around ethical procurement that will allow a company convicted of wrongdoing to avoid a long-term ban from bidding for federal contracts. Under the current rules, if snc-lavalin, for instance, is convicted of fraud and corruption charges, it faces a 10-year ban from bidding on federal contracts. That ban and the potential economic effects on the company, its workers and pensioners has been the central concern for those arguing against a criminal prosecution of the company. Carla Qualtrough is Canada's Minister of Public Services, Procurement and Accessibility, and she's with me now. Minister Qualtrough, good to see you.
Thank you.
Let me start there. Explain what changes are being proposed to the government's integrity regime.
Right. So the integrity regime is a set of administrative processes that basically address corporate wrongdoing and try and put additional oversight on companies that are doing business with the Government of Canada and actually try and incentivize better corporate behavior. So in September or October of 2017, we started a consultation process around enhancing our corporate wrongdoing toolkit, if you will, for the Government of Canada, which included enhancements to the integrity regime and, of course, the process of exploring doing remediation or deferred prosecution agreements.
Right. Okay. Tell me what the argument is from the government about why this is a good idea. Why? I mean, some people would say, you know, if you want to get better corporate behavior, you know, take them to court, fine them, you know, take a criminal proceeding, and not people. Some people view this as a way to let them off the hook again. You do something bad, come and see us, and maybe instead of a 10-year ban, it'll be a 2-year ban.
Yeah, a couple things. So there's 3 elements to the changes we're proposing. First, as you mentioned, was the increased flexibility in the term of debarment. Secondly is actually increasing the scope of triggers that could potentially result in debarment. So additional criminal offenses, whether you've been charged in another jurisdiction, whether you've done any kind of unethical business practices. And so in my mind, we're actually enhancing the integrity regime. We're not making it, you know, what you speak about specifically around the term of debarment. So now it will be from 0 to 10 instead of just a 10-year flat thing, is significantly stronger than other debarment periods across the country. So Quebec has a 5-year, the US has a 3-year debarment. The World Bank has up to 10 years, which is the model we're proposing we model.
Some people will look at this, and already we're seeing some criticism, people saying, look, this is starting to sound like an industrial development policy. If you're a company that commits a crime, don't worry about, you know, having not necessarily individuals going to jail, but don't worry about being banned from government contracts because we want to keep creating and holding jobs.
Yeah, but they will be banned, right? And it will be up to an independent registrar of an eligibility and suspension to decide how long that ban will last. And the things that he or she will take into consideration will be things like if there's been other such activity, the nature of the crime being at play. So absolutely, there's a flexibility of 0 to 10, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to get 0.
So could this apply to snc-lavalin?
Well, that depends. So right now, the Government of Canada has an administrative agreement with snc-lavalin that basically provides additional oversight on existing government contracts while the 2 court cases play themselves out. If this results in a criminal conviction, then it will be up to the registrar to determine what the term and the terms of debarment will be, because there will be an action of debarment, because that's what the policy provides for.
Is it a given that the term of debarment would be less than the 10 years?
I don't know. It's not been, first of all, the policy isn't actually in place.
Yeah.
So we have
when will it be in place?
Well, that depends. That depends on right now. So again, we've done 2 public consultations on this. Fall of 2017, then we put a draft policy out there for consideration in fall of 2018. We're looking at the feedback. So depending on the feedback we get, I would say within the next month-ish, but I can't guarantee that.
So I guess if you're looking at the political furor around the snc-lavalin story, it makes one wonder, look, if the company knew that the government was looking at changes to the integrity regime and the government's looking at changes to the integrity regime, why are we having all this? Why wouldn't Lavalin just say, let's go through the court process, the criminal court process, let's take our lumps, let's take whatever happens, and let's go back to the government with our tail between our legs if we lose, and get the time of the ban of 10 years reduced to 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and I don't actually know the answer to that, because that's really speculative, obviously.
Well, obviously the company knows this is.
Well, everybody's known that,
company
right?
knows this is another avenue to get off the bad boy list, off the ban list.
Well, potentially, I guess you could see it that way, and people are characterizing that as such. But in reality, these are very effective tools for us to provide more oversight on corporate behavior, because a lot of these are very difficult kind of criminal actions to prosecute. And this gives us a way to, while this stuff is playing out, make sure that we're looking at the company's book. We've got a third party overseeing existing contracts to make sure that Canadian dollars are being invested wisely. It's very complicated, and this is the second biggest engineering company, as I understand it, in the country. It's not surprising they'd have Government of Canada contracts.
Right, but so it's. I mean, again, is this all about jobs? I mean, I look at this and say, if the criminal sanction is a 10-year ban on bidding on government contracts, and you say it provides a chance for better oversight. So if the criminal sanction is a 10-year ban on government contracts, why would that be reduced?
May I correct you if you don't mind? Because
sure.
it's not the criminal sanction that's 10 years. That would be an administrative sanction put in place by the Government of Canada.
After a criminal conviction.
After a criminal conviction,
Sure. Okay.
just to be technically geeky
You're absolutely
lawyer
right.
about this. But
so if that's the sanction after a criminal conviction, why would there be any consideration to lower it?
I don't know the answer to that. My job has been, and I've been really focused, and in one way I'm really excited to be talking to you about integrity regime, but for the past 2 years we've been talking with experts around the world about this, trying to get this right, trying to figure out best practices, trying to figure out how we...
No, but when you say you don't know, this is a government initiative. Like, you're redoing the integrity regime to leave the option of reducing the debarment time from 10 years. If the current sanction after a criminal conviction is 10 years, why would you consider lowering that?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, we know that the kind of punishment has to meet the crime. So as we expand the scope of eligible triggers to potentially result in debarment, we have to understand that then it's not just the most serious of crimes that are in play anymore. It can be a violation of Canada Labour Code versus being accused or charged of terrorist attacks. And so you have to have a sliding scale, if you will, so that the register has the flexibility to basically make sure that the punishment fits the crime.
All right, Carla Qualtrough, thanks for coming in to talk about this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.